morning everybody, welcome back. As you can see, I've now finished painting my little fish on here. It's taken actually a couple hours. Some of them I painted a little extra on, such as this one. I added a little bit of extra yellow to it than you might see in pictures. Some of them I also took liberties and added extra color. I put blue here with a bit of orange, and then orange up here, and with the real fish they don't actually have that, so you know, you can just make things more colorful as you like. I didn't paint these in perfect amazing detail, and the reason for that is because if you looked at them under the sea they're going to be all fuzzy anyway, so they don't have to be perfect. But now it's going to be very exciting, because what I want to do is I want to put a layer over top of them to make them look like they're all blurred under the water. So if you look down here on at my table, see what I've got here. I have made 3 glazes. Now a glaze is a term in acrylic painting for a very thin watered down mixture. So you can see I've got a light blue, which I started with the same color I started with at the very beginning. And then I've got the darker blue, and I've made more of this one. And I've got the green. Now, in my experience, these are not quite as thick as cream, but they're not too watery. And sometimes what happens is I find that I have to add a little bit more water. So I've got a cup of water handy. I might have to add a little bit. If they are too thin, then I'm going to have to stop, and I'm going to have to top up my colors and just make them a little thicker. I also find that when you're blending these things, the best thing to actually mix with to make them thin is a brush. And the reason for that is, I'm not sure if you can see this, but at the very bottom there's little lumps of the paint. And traditionally when you're mixing paint, you can have a metal or a plastic palette knife, which is great for mixing like blue and yellow to make green, and you're mixing, and this is a great thing to do that with, or even a popsicle stick. But when you have all the lumps at the bottom, you're going to have to really mash it to make it into a thinner glaze. There's one other thing I want to mention about glazing. There are these things that are for acrylic painting, and this one is actually called glazing medium. This one is called regular gel. This one happens to be gloss, shiny. You could get matte. Now I need to say a word about this, because maybe you are a painter and you're already familiar with using a glazing liquid like this, and you might be tempted to use it on your wall mural. Please be aware that if you use this, that later if you go to cover this up with primer, sometimes glazing medium and gel can be a hard thing to cover on the wall. So the idea is, if you were painting on a canvas, you might add some water to your paint to make your thin coat, but you would also pour some of this in, this glazing medium. And the reason for that is that this really makes it go on smoothly. So ideally this is great. This really is what I would like to add to this. And that would really make it go on nicely, and it would also make it drip less. But I'm worried about later one day, you know, wanting to prime over this thing, and it would be a problem. So just be aware of that. It's great stuff. It's great for walls too, to stop the drips, but it can be a problem down the road. Now, I mentioned dripping, so the other thing you should have, roll of paper towel. At the very beginning, when I first started painting this, I had these nice flat brushes. And remember, they're very, very soft. I showed you the 2-inch, the 1-inch, and the 3-inch. So I'm going back to my 3-inch. When you go to make your little glazes here, your little thin coats, make sure that your containers are big enough to dip in, because I can't tell you how many times I've made something really thin and then my brush didn't fit. So now it's going to be fun. I'm actually going to try and apply this stuff. So we'll come up here. I'm going to start with my light one. And I may or may not just copy my light and dark. I'm just going to see how it goes. So I'm going to start with the light, and then I'm going to start adding the darker colors over top too. So this is fun, and we'll see right away whether this is thick enough. If it's not, we may have to pause while I add some paint. Oh, that's great. Really like that. Now I think, needless to say, all of my fish that I had painted are very dry, right? Let me just go like that a little bit more. Keep working that in. And hopefully, as you're watching this, you're thinking, hey, that's cool. They look like they're receding into the background a little bit. Over here. Now I'm going to switch to the dark here because as you can tell I'm getting too much of a white contrast. So here I go. Comes my dark blue, and I'm actually going to start up here in the corner. I'm going to come down. First time you do this, you might be thinking, no, this is kind of scary. Don't worry, all will be well. And again, I've said this before in other videos, it's just paint, so we can always fix it. Oh, I really like that. Fun. Now, I've got to be careful. Don't want to get my white wall. I'm just going onto my tape, right? Going back and forth. A bit more. Pleased that my consistency is okay. Wasn't sure how it was going to be. I do find it's missing in a couple of places, and that is where the glazing liquid would be a really good thing, because it would smooth that right out, but not a lot I can do. I want you to imagine for a second that this was a canvas or even a big piece of watercolor paper. If it was watercolor paper, I would probably have it taped down. Switching back to the light. What I would do, if this was a canvas, I probably wouldn't even be applying it like this. I would be laying my canvas flat, and believe it or not, I would just pour it on. And then I can either use a brush to do what I'm doing, or I can just pick up the canvas and kind of tilt it around just to get the wash to run where it wants to go. There we go. Alright, so I'm working quite quickly. Coming up to this guy. And I had a lot of paint on my brush just now, and it almost dripped. So far so good. I'm okay. Now, something else I could have done and I didn't for this painting. I could have added some seaweed, or I could have painted some white circles on or light blue circles on for bubbles here and there. And it would have been a nice effect to do that. And then do this over top to make them look like they're receding. Okay, so we're going to take a little break here because I'm going to add a little bit more paint.